Greetings, everyone. Welcome to our November COSEM Equity Call as part of our series. Really pleased to have you with us. And as in true form, being a mindfulness organization, we are going to take a moment to be mindful and practice just a moment of sitting meditation. So I invite you to join us and lightly close your eyes or gaze down. And take 3 deep breaths at your own pace. I'm going to ring the bell. When you can no longer hear the bell, please take that as a sign to be back and fully present. Right. So as we open this call, we are continuing with Allyship. And this is part 2. I don't know if we'll do a part 3 or not. We'll see how the flow goes. I love that our equity series is very responsive to the needs of both the participants and the community. So before we begin, it's really important that we have that we name a few of our practice agreements, and then we'll go into introductions for our time together for today. So one of the key practice agreements is really being sure to lean into any discomfort that you may be experiencing. Talking about equity can get uncomfortable at times, and we do our best to be compassionate, empathetic, and direct at the same time, and really speak our truths. So lean into that discomfort and the dissonance. That's where our growth really lies. And in that, also be sure to practice your own self-care. So if that means you need to take a deep breath, pause for a moment to reflect, just do what you need to do to stay engaged, which is another agreement, to be sure to stay engaged and stay present with us. And the 2 last ones I feel are very important as well. And that is that we're definitely not engaging in an equity conversation that vilifies white people. We are definitely discussing the context of education and our own work in the context of whiteness, but we can have that conversation without vilifying white people. And I think that that's really critical to this work as well as all of our growth. And then lastly, practice confidentiality, just knowing that this call is recorded. Please be sure that you're sharing at a level that's comfortable for you, because the call is shared widely. And we don't know who will eventually hear this recording. So that is just something to be mindful of, especially if you're using examples or anything like that, not naming people's names unless we're here together on the call and already have agreement around that, which I know that 3 of us that are on this call today, in terms of speaking, sharing our stories, we have each other's permission for that. So I just want to name that. So we have 2 wonderful guests, if you will, here on our call. Many of you know me as well. I'm Tovi Scruggs-Hussein, and I am co-president with Tracy here at COSEM. And I do a lot of race-based healing work throughout the nation and focus on emotional intelligence and mindfulness and racial healing. And joining us today are 2 other members of COSEM as well. And we have Sally Albright Green. And this year, Sally became an instructional coach in the Valley View Unit School District in suburban Chicago after 14 years of being in the classroom. She's explored racial identity and social justice issues for close to 20 years and is compelled to work towards equity in education. She's also practiced mindfulness for 12 years and has trained students and staff for the last 5. She's working to start a COSEM chapter in the southwest suburbs and will be a presenter at MCon 2020 on racial literacy, as well as the mindfulness and equity workshop that I and Grace will be doing with her. And then our other guest is Grace Helms. And as the founder of Power to Be, Grace offers workshops and presentations on using mindfulness as a tool for personal healing and equity-based social change. Grace also teaches as an adjunct instructor at the University of Michigan Dearborn, and she has had a daily meditation practice for over 10 years. She's passionate about mindfully exploring systemic whiteness and how to be a true ally for racial equity. At MCon 2020, Grace is presenting on mindfulness, equity, and implicit bias. So I'm so thrilled to be engaging in this call with two other dynamic racial healing allies. In this call, we're looking to really share with you how allyship has played out in our process, how racial healing has played out in our process, and how we've also been able to acknowledge some of our blind spots and use our own mindfulness tools and equity tools in the work that we've been doing collaboratively as we've been preparing for MCon. So it's sure to be a fun call and some good sharing to happen. So I would really like to just start with how our planning process has been and how we've acknowledged our blind spots. That's how this call kind of organically came into being. As we were shifting from last month's call on optical allyship and allyship, we thought that this would be a fabulous way to bring in a part two of really seeing allyship in action and how all these tools have come into play. So I'm going to turn it over to Sally or Grace to kind of share how the allyship piece has shown up for them in our planning process and how some of our blind spots for all three of us and our learning edges have kind of come into play. So, Sally or Grace.
Shall I go ahead, Sally, or would you like to start?
I guess I can start by just talking about the fact that we, Grace and I spent, when it comes to the process of planning, Grace and I spent quite a bit of time getting to know each other. We hadn't met, and working, Grace, maybe 4 weeks, we worked and created a slide deck for our workshop up to a point where we felt like we really needed Tovi's voice. We really needed our, racial accountability partner. And we set up a call and had that meeting with Tovi beginning of October. Does that sound right? And from there, then, I think that was our first chance to really talk and begin to get to know each other inside of this work. And like Tovi, like you said, we've all really had different opportunities to feel discomfort, explore our own instincts and reactions to things, and just learn. From my perspective, I've learned so much in such a short period of time. I don't know if you want to add to that, Grace.
Yeah, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
And thank you for the introductions, Tovi.
Mm-hmm.
What really stands out to me about it is I've been reflecting on this relationship, and really the three of us have only been in relationship for a short time, very short time, probably under 2 months total, and it's such a deep relationship so quickly because I think it has to do with the fact that we all share this intention, this deep intention, to connect authentically, to be vulnerable with one another, to be aware of what's coming up within us, in relationship with one another, and just within ourselves, around our own conditioning. And it feels like we just kind of dove in to that kind of deep relationship. And we're all interested and willing to go there, which I feel like is unique in terms of relationships I have, and I'm grateful for that. We had some conversations in our first few meetings. Our first conversations were starting to talk about content, really. So we had shared, Sally and I shared the content of what we had prepared so far in terms of an outline for this workshop for COSEM. And Tovi gave us some good feedback on it. And and I think it was in that first call where there was some deeper reflection. Tovi did some deeper reflection and came back and shared a couple of things she had questions about or wasn't sure why we had done things a certain way. And I think what came out of those conversations was, one thing, to be specific, is that Sally and I realized through Tovi's guidance that we had created a workshop so far in its beginning stages that was really oriented more toward a white audience. And Sally and I really didn't realize that, hadn't intended that necessarily. We originally were planning or considering doing a workshop that would be for a white audience, to do affinity group work and to support white people in deeply exploring internalized whiteness, really. And then switched out of that and shifted and are very interested in holding in a space that's open to people of all racial backgrounds for this workshop that we're doing, and feel like that would be a richer experience. But Sally and I, our framing still was really coming from a place, from our own frames, from our own perspectives as white people. And it was something that we needed brought to our attention. It brings up this quote to me that I'm reminded of often, which is, I think, Sandra Kim, founder of Everyday Feminism. I think she was the person who I heard this quote from. She says, privilege means not knowing what you don't know and not needing to know. And so I felt that deeply, and I have felt that, in my learning in this relationship a lot, that there are these things that I don't know. And as much as I care, and as much as I read, and as much as I try to inform myself and learn and grow in this work over years, there are still things I don't know, and that I'm gonna miss. And I think for me, that's why this relationship is so rich, is it's in such a loving, caring way. Tovi has helped us to see the things that we were not seeing.
And I'd love to echo and thank you so much for that, Grace. I want to be sure that people are clear that the relationship is not about me mentoring anybody or guiding people on this. We're just really in relationship, and how we're all really showing up, as Grace named, so authentically and so vulnerably, that it's allowing us to hold that intention, as Sally named, that we're just showing up so intentional to partake in the work while simultaneously doing the work, and being aware of that in ourselves. And it makes me so hopeful about what it means for people to be racial allies, and how it shifted the equity conversation from, remember how it used to be like doing diversity work, and it would get so uncomfortable that it almost wouldn't be successful. And I feel like just as a community, we're really growing away from that, and we're modeling what it looks like. Like, yes, it's only been 2 months, but the growth has been so huge because of our intentionality and our willingness to engage. What Grace didn't share from my end, which is fine and appropriate, is that I had a lot of fear that I didn't realize I had, and even reaching out to Grace and Sally and giving them the feedback that I gave. And the fear was just the conditioning of, here I am as this Black woman leader holding this space and tell these 2 white women something really difficult. And how is that going to land? Am I going to damage a relationship? Am I going to mess things up? Am I going to make it so that we're not able to smoothly work together to have a successful workshop? And it was just so refreshing to have 2 white women respond in a way that held the feedback and held the space for feedback, and allowed me the space to even kind of swim in being able to properly articulate what I was feeling and how it was landing. And it reminds me of some things that Robin DiAngelo has shared around people's white fragility, and in a sense, rules of engagement around that white people can't handle feedback around the isms or their own whiteness, and that feedback has to be super calm and can't have emotion in it in order to be heard. And I just really appreciated the allyship and how it's shown up in that we're breaking those rules of engagement in a sense and holding our own awareness to be able to do so. And so I just think it's been really rich because everyone is just like laid out. We're here for this learning. We're here for this intention. So that's what was happening on my end. I was experiencing fear and then being able to be disarmed out of the fear to really show up as who I am as a Black woman and feel like that can be met. I really appreciated that.
And I would say that was probably different kinds of fear, but I think I was afraid too, Toby. And I think I felt afraid to make a mistake or cause harm, which I've done quite a bit of study of whiteness and our ability to cause harm. And it was so far from what I was trying to do. I mean, it silenced me. I remember particularly, we actually had a conversation. Is that Miriam? Are you guys hearing that audio?
Yeah.
Is it me? That's better. That's better.
Thank you.
Yeah. I can still hear it though.
I have mine off, I think. Can you hear me?
Okay. Yeah, I hear your voice.
Oh. I'm gonna go quieter and see what happens. Okay.
It got a lot better. There, it's better.
Okay.
Thank you, Mimi.
Sorry.
Toby, I remember specifically, and Grace, we were on a call together talking about our slide deck and the photographs specifically. And Toby asked me a question about the people of color. All of our slide deck has all photographs, people of color. And she asked that question, and I could not answer that question because I was afraid to say what I had done to choose those photographs and what they were about, because I didn't want to cause harm. And there's probably other things I was afraid of. But shortly after we talked, I sat for a few minutes and then was able to explain, and did so in an email, what my thinking was about why I chose the photographs, and then was able to even explore deeper why I had been afraid to share the story. And then Toby read what I had written, and the three of us are all on these emails where we're sharing these ideas and these questions. And Toby's perspective was so important to me. And I never would have learned so much if I hadn't, even though I felt silly because I could not articulate it while we were all there on the phone, it still worked out okay. I was able to do that, and I knew I needed to do that to just keep learning through that other lens of what the kinds of things I was doing, how they landed.
And it's beautiful to give ourselves permission to not know in the moment. The work is so deep that we have to unpack it. I think is a nice segue too into how we're using some of our mindfulness tools and practices, and how we're sitting in this, and sometimes we take it to the mat to figure it out.
Yeah, I was reflecting on that as well, just as you were sharing, Sally, that it's very interesting to observe, just closely observe each moment of what's arising when something does come up in our relationship, as it has multiple times. So something comes up, I have a question, Sally has a question, Toby has a question, something comes up, and I notice all those feelings that I've noticed so many times before as I engaged in racial justice work. But now I'm watching them intently to learn from those things and to not get so caught in them, which is really the gift of mindfulness practice. So I can see, I can watch these sensations creep in. I can feel that immediate clenching and tension in my body, and what I would call a sense of wrongness, or a fear about being wrong, or a fear, like you said, Sally, of doing harm, of creating harm. And then there's thoughts that pop up, the immediate thoughts when I make a mistake, or when I do something that I, maybe I didn't realize I had done. The thoughts are, who am I to do this work? I'm doing the wrong thing. I'm creating more harm. Who am I to do this work? I should give up, right? That being able to give up idea is even rooted in whiteness. Being able to walk away from this work really is rooted. So then exploring that further, and then not so much shame as some despair comes up for me, like, oh, I'm never going to learn. I'm never going to get there. Okay, so that all comes up in about 30 seconds. It's heavy and it's exhausting, temporarily exhausting. And then I'll sit there watching it, and then I watched it. In all of these times that this come up in our relationship, I've watched it dissipate as I've attended to it. It dissipates. And what I'm left with is this resolve, this deep love for you all, for this work, for being able to take the next step. Oh, I learned this new thing. This beautiful learning just occurred, and it hurt. There was pain there, and now I'm taking another step forward with these other souls who care deeply and who are going to stick with me in it. So it's been powerful, really, on that level too, to just see that slow transformation with each new learning.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And I think of beauty, and thank you for that wonderful sharing. I'm going to add this little piece, and then Sally, if you want to jump in, please do. Part of that just names too that our relationship has evolved even in this short time beyond just talking about the workshop. We've started to reach out and share some other things about how we're coping in our racial healing work, different ideas that are coming up, different projects that are coming up. And I'm bringing this up to simply stress the importance of racial allyship and the importance of having friends who don't look like you, and relationships that don't look like you, and how valuable that is. And beyond the trivial, oh yeah, I have a best friend that's Black or a best friend that's white, but who can you name in your professional circle that is down for giving you the honest feedback, is down for asking you the hard questions? Who are you going to put in your inner circle where you're going to be vulnerable, where you're going to trust, where you're going to have to bounce ideas off of someone, or bounce your own racial journey off of someone who's not thinking just like you, whose experience and lens is different enough to give you the edge and give you the insights? And I have other friends like that, and I do consider you both friends, even though we're starting off, in a professional way. But I'm just naming that for the people who are listening, that if you don't have that, look to start establishing that, even if it means that you're at work and you and someone else are going into agreement to have, in a sense, an integrity partner, an accountability partner. What I'm starting to call, what we've been calling a racial healing ally partner. Like, how can you have that? And for the sake of the growth and for the sake of the work. And all that growth and work, we have to remember, is anchored to our service to others and how critical that is. So I just want to highlight that. So thank you. Mm-hmm.
I feel like I have been really lucky in my middle school, where I worked for 14 years. I did have a racial accountability partner. She helped me learn in so many situations. And I would come to her with those kinds of questions. So it is really important. And if you're in the space where you want to learn, that's the best way. That's the most efficient way. It's the most balanced way. I think, to be able to have someone that you actually see, during the course of your workday, that you can touch on your stuff.
Absolutely. Well, we're going to start to bring our call to a close. Is there anything that you both want to share or add before we open it up for questions?
Maybe it's important to say something like the amount of time that I think Grace and I both have spent in self-study and pursuing racism and issues of race and how the landscape has changed, and the theorists are, there's just so many more voices, and there's a lot of work required on the part of white people to be able to recognize and understand racial literacy, and just encourage to show up with equity in an educational space in the United States is becoming critically important. So it's not something to pass on when you have a chance, and to actually encourage people to pursue. It's such rich work.
Absolutely. Thank you for that.
Mhm.
And it reminds me of something that Brene Brown said. She said that within the next 5 years, the currency of leadership, the currency of what will be entailed will rely on connection. It will be the currency of connection.
Mm-hmm.
And the racial healing work and our equity work and our belonging and inclusion is all in that currency of connection. Yeah.
Thank goodness.
Absolutely. Yeah, thank goodness.
You need it. Yeah.
So thank you again. We're going to open this up to some questions. If anyone has a question, please unmute yourself and feel free. And if it's directed towards any one person, that's fine too. And if you don't have a question, maybe you have some feedback to share on your learning or what you heard. Well, you know I'm all about flow, so if there's no questions or feedback or anything, we're going to end up wrapping it up.
I'll speak if you can hear me. I'm driving. This is Erin.
Yes, Erin.
So I just want to thank the three of you for your honesty, for naming the fear, for naming the process, the wanting to give up and how that's privilege, for the relationship that you've developed in such a short time. It just touches me so deeply, makes me so hopeful to hear all sides, all three sides. And I'm really grateful for the opportunity to learn about your process. I don't have any questions. I'm just filled with heartfulness and gratitude and appreciation for the three of you. So thank you.
Thank you, Erin. We
Thank
appreciate
you.
it.
Thanks, Erin.
So, if you would like to learn more and explore racial healing work and the context of whiteness and our collaboration, we are presenting at MCon 2020 along with a lot of other fabulous presenters. I know that MCon 2020 is simply a prelude to all of the wonderful MCons that are sure to come. And you want to get in on this ride nice and early by being at MCon 2020 and starting your own journey and growth work in not only mindfulness, but in racial healing work, and start creating your nice bank account full of connection currency. And so get that going. And so we look forward to seeing you there in February. So I turn it over to our fabulous and illustrious founder.
Sure. I was trying to click myself so that I showed up in the center here. Here we go. I was gonna wait until to see if Mimi had anything to share or anybody else did before popping on. Well, I actually had a question for Sally, because when I learned this call was going to be about allyship and action, I thought, we'll dive in to see how it's come up in schools. And so when Sally brought up seeking an ally and having a professional ally. I've never had that. I have a few Black friends, but in a professional situation, I'm just wondering. Obviously, it just unfolds, right? You're become friends at work, but was there a certain conversation that you had when you brought that up? I guess I would have never thought to have a conversation like that.
Well, we were colleagues. We taught 8th grade language arts together for a number of years, but I also was facilitating with my principal a book study, an old Gary Howard book called You Can't Teach What You Don't Know. It was not my favorite text, but it was early kind of equity work stuff, systemic whiteness stuff. So Shanice, who's my friend and became my partner in this work, we were just friends enough that I just felt comfortable, and I would say, okay, Shanice, I need help, right? Or I need to know how to think about this, or so it was real organic, but it was based on a close friendship and a close. We worked so closely together, teaching literature and writing to 13 and 14-year-olds. So there's this connection going on anyway because of that work, and probably opportunities. My school is now about 45% Hispanic, another 30% African Americans. So very, very ethnically diverse school, which I feel fortunate for, because I just had so many opportunities to learn and grow. But in answer to your question, how did it come up or how did it start? I think it was based in our friendship. And I guess I understand you can't just approach someone but maybe you can. I don't know, Toby. Do you have?
That's the seed that I'm planting. I'm planting that from what I feel like we've learned. I feel like if the intentionality is there and the authenticity is there, then you can pull off asking someone.
Let's do it. Yeah.
Let's do it. So I feel like it is mutual. And, a lot of times we'll say that this work is done on the backs of people of color or done on the backs of Black folks, whatever the case is. In this relationship, it hasn't felt that way. I do feel like you all are expressing the gratitude and the learning, but it's also quite mutual because, having been on this journey for 25 years myself, there's still things unfolding within me. There's still learnings that I'm having. And so I see it as very reciprocal and very balanced. And so I am naming that I think that we should start approaching it with intentionality to really asking colleagues, can I be this for you? Will you be this for me? I think that's gonna what's the word? Accelerate the learning and the healing.
Yeah. Blow it open.
Yeah, blow it open.
Yeah. And I guess, Tracy, I would recommend D'Angelo's first book. It's Racial Literacy, or I can see the cover. I don't have it right here with me, but it's just very eye-opening if you haven't done much of this work at all as a white person, to start to approach what whiteness really is and what it looks like. As white people, we could stay white and comfortable in the United States for a long time without ever having to approach or question. So to begin that, and then I do have a Black friend at my new school that I've been considering, and I'm going to, I don't know her very well, but I'm going to have a conversation with her about being a partner at work, because I'm really interested to know how she feels like our climate is there, because it's important to know. I have my lens, but my lens does not pick up the same kind of thing.
Tracy, I'll chime in too, because Sally and I have had some conversations, and I know that I went to, it was helpful to me because I went to Zaretta Hammond's first part of her training in Chicago. And one of the things that she brought up was fear of messing up. She called it FOMO. And I think that we're afraid to mess up, and it understandably, right? Because these are personal and touchy things. And so when we're afraid, though, then we're not gonna grow and we're not gonna learn. And she pushed us as an audience because she'd ask questions and no one wanted to answer. And she kind of pushed us and said, I look out at the audience and I see you guys are not willing to make a mistake, or she didn't call it messing up. She said we have to reframe our thinking. But it does feel very vulnerable, and it does feel like messing up, and it is privilege when you get to choose, right? And so that's a lot to think about. But understand, I guess what she said was, and I think D'Angelo says this too, but you are going to mess up if you're going to, and Brene Brown says it too, if you're going to get in the arena and play, you're going to get hurt every now and then. And that's just the cost of doing business. That's just part of being human. And so I know I was really hesitant to mess up. I wanted to make sure I said the right thing. And then I agonized over when I did do something. And I don't know if I've shared it with Sally, but I presented on mindfulness, and we talk in mindfulness about monkey mind. Well, I had a lot of African American students, and I presented I put up a picture of monkey, and when I have presented that with teachers, they all find the monkey really cute and blah, blah, blah. And but this group of students really was bothered by that. And I had no idea why, because that seems like really blatant. Like, I'm another monkey and calling you. But it was really offensive. And I literally agonized for days because the person I presented for said, I'd like to talk to you about your slides. And I couldn't figure out what it was I'd said or done wrong. And I was so afraid and felt so bad. So just know that it is awkward to ask those questions. And it might be, I was making friends with a woman. I asked a question and it really offended her. And then things kind of ended. And it did hurt. And I guess that's the risk you run.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
So that's it.
Mimi. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
You're welcome.
So
I was gonna maybe ask Grace a question, but I know we're coming up on 45 minutes. Maybe we can, and the people who attend their workshop can ask all kinds of questions of these. Maybe, I know because this is a new topic for many to see this as a workshop choice, and and I know the first time I saw some of the words like systemic whiteness, I was like, what? And I'm like, oh yes, but it like, I guess I want to make sure that everybody gets maybe comfortable with what's going to happen in this workshop, so they're not just seeing these words they're unfamiliar with and being like, yeah, I don't know if I'm up for share, maybe I'll start to just do this on my own first and read these books. I'm not quite ready to be vulnerable in front of a group. And I'm feeling very vulnerable because this is all new to me, and I'm knowing that this video is could be seen by many. But so maybe Grace, maybe you can start and then just share a little bit about what highlights of what kind of that morning will look like of the workshop on Thursday that you're doing.
Sure, and I'll just share for a minute so we don't go too much over time. But really, our intention with this workshop is to invite people in, especially beginners. And anyone is welcome, but especially people who haven't done this work much. And our approach is, and we're trying to be really intentional around our approach being inclusive and working through that to make sure that this is an opportunity to start exploring, or if you're a person who has been exploring, to continue exploring in relationship with others who care. Start exploring our own racial identities, and how they're showing up internally for us, how they're affecting our behavior, our thoughts, perhaps and often without us even knowing, especially for white people. And then how that's being expressed in the world. So, so the idea is that we'll do a lot of interactive exploration, but also a lot of personal self-reflection to give people an opportunity to start digging in and really starting wherever they are, which is going to be, there's going to be a lot of diversity in the room in terms of where people are with this work. And we anticipate that, and we welcome everyone. Sally and I have both been in a lot of trainings like this and are working to be calling in. And Tovi offers these trainings all the time, and I've been offering these trainings for a couple of years on some level, mindfulness-based equity work. And really, I believe that the three of us have this intention around it to make it an invitation, an opportunity, not something to fear or to worry about being called out in or anything like that. Yeah, but thanks for asking that question, Tracy.
Anything to add, Sally, or should we close out with a little mindfulness?
I would just say what Grace said. It's exactly right. We want it to be inclusive and recognizing. I think it's not easy to start this work if you're real, but also making it so that, especially in a group of people, it's possible, and leaving with a sense of hopefulness and a sense of understanding everything they have yet to understand.
Thank you, Sally. So I would like to do a reading from Brene Brown's Dare to Lead. If I could, to close us out. Does that work?
Sounds wonderful.
And I feel like this reading also captures the spirit of the work of what this work means in its entirety, especially for us as educators. So she says on page 13, as I often tell teachers, some of our most important leaders, we can't always ask our students to take off the armor at home or even on their way to school because their emotional and physical safety may require self-protection. But what we can do and what we are ethically called to do is create a space in our schools and classrooms where all students can walk in and for that day or hour, take off the crushing weight of their armor, hang it on a rack, and open their hearts to truly being seen. We must be guardians of that space as the adults that allows students to breathe and be curious and explore the world and be who they are without suffocation. They deserve one place where they can rumble with vulnerability and their hearts can exhale. And what I know from the research is that we should never underestimate the benefit to a child of having a place to belong, even one where they can take off their armor. It can and often does change the trajectory of their life. Dr. Brene Brown, and why we dare to lead and do this work of inclusivity and equity and belonging. And mindfulness is the source and the root of our own transformation. Ding on that.
Ding on that. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.